I'm so curious. I know podcasts are all the rage and all of that now, but I mean, you have so much on your plate. How and why did you decide to get this thing off the ground, and how did it become as popular as it has become so quickly?
None of your business, Ushi. None of your business, Michael.
It's the None of Your Business podcast, hosted by Michael and Ushi.
Welcome back, everybody, to the None of Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Michael Greenfield. With me is Ushi Schwartz and a wonderful guest, Judah Gutwein.
Thank you for having me.
Judah, welcome to the program. I'm excited to have you here because we've done a lot of work together, and you throw an amazing event once a year, and I think that's just a little part of what you do, which is so amazing. The process of what happens throughout that event is great, which is what I love. You can get a drink at the bar, and there's not a line because there are people waiting to get their spray paint on their hat, and there's music, and then there's panels, which I was a part of, and
Right.
thank God I had a full room, which was great, and it was very nice. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're
Thank
so
you.
happy to have you here.
So, Michael, did you do any research on Judah? Like, do you know his background? Do you know his secret talents?
I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're going to find it out. I mean, I chat GPT'd you, and
You did?
yeah, it has a lot to say, a lot of good things.
Cool.
The only thing I know about you, Judah, I know two things about you. I know number one is that you're part of the Zimmet conference. Is that the conference we were talking about?
No,
Not the Zimmet conference.
the CEU
sorry,
event.
The
Not
CEU
part of. He's the
events conference.
creator of
That's
the
what I meant.
CEU event.
Yes. Okay, it's the local show here as well,
Right.
right? And you've been doing that for how
5
many-
years.
For
This
5
was the
years.
first year, yeah.
Very big show, very popular in healthcare. You know, a lot of operators come, a lot of vendors come. Wonderful, amazing. And the second thing I know about you is that you run a media company, right?
Correct.
And that entails, doing marketing, and specifically for healthcare,
Only healthcare.
only healthcare.
Mostly anyone in the CCRC continuum. So nursing homes, independent living, assisted living, some adult daycares, and all of the ancillary businesses that feed the industry.
Okay, cool.
Rehab, pharmaceuticals, things like that.
And you were doing this for how long? How long do you have this company?
The company is 8 years old, so I'm doing this 8 years. But before that, I was a licensed nursing home administrator for 5 years. So cumulatively, I'm in this industry, in the healthcare industry, about 13 years at this point, between being a nursing home admissions director and working my way up to being an administrator, a regional administrator. And then after 5 years on that side, I went out and I started SkyCare Media.
So interesting.
Right.
You're an anomaly. I mean, you really are.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking, Ushi?
Yeah, of course I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah. It's
You
very
become a
strange.
nursing home administrator, you want to buy a nursing home.
Exactly. Like the natural course, like the sequence that should take place is that you're an administrator, you learn the ropes, you're managing your facility, and then you say, hey, I'm basically doing everything anyway. I can buy my own facility and run it myself. And that's what people typically do. Some of the largest operators today were at one point themselves an administrator.
Right.
So you didn't go down that path. You decided, you know what, I want to go on the other side entirely and go on the vendor side pretty much. So like that shift was a little bit unnatural. So what led you to make that decision?
I appreciate that. So I'll tell you, I'm going to be vulnerable for a second. I specifically made a different decision. I started out as a concierge. I became an admissions director, became an administrator. I got to a point where I would break out in hives almost when the ombudsman would walk into the building, when you had these litigious families who had the ombudsman on speed dial, those people, the customers from hell that you'd never make happy regardless of the circumstances. So when I was at the tail end of my time as an administrator, and I had to make that jump because I needed to increase my revenue, my salary, and I felt like I hit my cap. I think everybody in the industry as an administrator gets to a point where, irrespective of whether they're in New Jersey, in New York, it's just difference of revenue in terms of salary, but their package, the compensation hits their cap, they hit their cap, and they either have to recreate themselves to make themselves more valuable, or they leave. Those are the people that become owners, the ones you're talking about, where they say, be nice to the administrator, he's a future owner.
Exactly.
I said to myself, if I'm an administrator now and I get heart palpitations like at the end of a holiday when I'm worried that my phone is blowing up, or at night during a snow season where I'm worried they're going to call me saying the parking lot isn't plowed or somebody fell. I said, as an owner, you just compound that by 10. And how can I do it? I want to live. I want to be healthy. You can't put a price tag on health. So I said I have to go in a totally different direction. I would just digress for a second, if you don't mind, on this question. It's interesting. I feel like, and some of the listeners will clearly remember this. I feel like my foray into this portion of healthcare when I started SkyCare, I broke out, so to say, with this controversial. It was an article, a post that I wrote that I put on LinkedIn about this phenomenon, where I basically said that there are kids today who become owners post-administration. They find some rich uncle, and the uncle says, oh, today you got to either own a nursing home or you got to be in real estate. There's nothing else. And they throw some money at him, and the kid buys a nursing home. And I said in this article, I said, I'm thunderstruck how some of these administrators, they were failures. They couldn't manage a survey. They couldn't run a building properly. And all of a sudden, they get their hands on some money, and they decide that they'd be a better owner owning the place, operating the place, when they couldn't get it done as an administrator. And I went on to say that some of the old owners, the old soldiers who have buildings that they basically squeezed until they couldn't, justify keeping the building, they go and sell these buildings to these young hotshots that are wet behind the ears. They make a killing. And I ended the article by writing that the old owners are laughing all the way to the bank. And I posted it. If I tell you, I believe that's when that's when I got placed on the map, both positive and negative. A lot of feedback. Some people said, oh, you're saying things that people are thinking. They didn't want to say it. Some people say, you're throwing some of us under the rug. This industry, we have to protect each other, watch each other. But it's really this phenomenon. Every administrator has that ambition. Some of them are successful. Some of them, it's an abject disaster, and they wind up selling the facility very, very soon thereafter for pennies on the dollar, and that's why we all see this. Facilities change hands all the time. It's like a cyclical thing. But because of all those reasons, I said there's no way, even if I get my hands on money, I'm not becoming an owner. I just didn't have the constitution for it.
So you had no interest.
Interest
in continuing and really just doubling down on the nursing home operation side because you respected it too much. You knew what it really takes to run a nursing home. And by becoming an owner and buying a second and a third nursing home, you knew that your life was going to be chaotic. You knew that you weren't going to have a lot of time for yourself. I actually respect that you, and more people, more owners like you should be very scared because it's a huge responsibility. You're running a facility where people are living. They have to receive care. And it's a really big responsibility. And I also think that every nursing home owner should have the requirement that they were a nursing home administrator at one point, because it's not just a transaction, right? This is not just you're managing somebody's portfolio or you're managing money, right? You're not a financial advisor,
right?
Like you're actually like there's so many regulations and there's so many categories within a nursing home that you have to be educated on to understand how to run it. Like that should actually be the norm. I think as a baseline, we should really vet out the people who are buying nursing homes. Would you agree with that?
I agree to an extent. Michael and I, we were having this discussion at the CEU event where we were saying exactly what you just referred to is these are people that are being cared for. They're not widgets. This is a very different type of business. Healthcare is something that you really ought to want to make a difference. It's God's work. I believe that it's the toughest job in the world. People in the trenches every day caring for elderly, frail, compromised people. And I think you're right. I think a prerequisite to owning a nursing home should be some basic background, some basic experience in the healthcare sector, because that gives you an appreciation for the work, gives you an appreciation for the responsibility that comes along with ownership. And also the idea that, yes, it's a way to pay the bills, but at the end of the day, there's a million things you could be doing where you don't have your hands in this kind of a incredibly responsible position in terms of elderly people and their health. If you don't have the wherewithal, the gumption, the desire to not just make a living, but to really care about people, go do something else. It's not for you. So for those reasons, I think the background in healthcare definitely helps. Definitely helps for all the right reasons.
And people don't recognize also when your license is on the wall, you're responsible legally for everything that goes on.
Correct.
So we had a client and a friend that was a nursing home administrator that got arrested one day, and he didn't understand why. Like they walked into the facility and they arrested him, and he found out only a few hours later that a resident had passed away a year and a half before, and because the oxygen tank wasn't monitored properly, and something happened to that resident, it was the fault of the administrator whose license is on the wall. And that
Correct.
person took the fall. And the reality is, like you're saying, the heart palpitations and the after-hour calls and the responsibilities and so many staff members that can do so many challenging things that's on your head. I don't think
Correct.
people appreciate that about running a nursing home. I've said it once at a table at a dinner table, and I had so many friends of mine that were insulted when I said running a nursing home is one of the most difficult jobs in the world. It's like running 10 different consecutive businesses at once. You're running a restaurant, you're running a payroll company, you're running a maintenance company all at once, and all those risks are on you. So it's
Right.
pretty cool that you went out of it. But when you went out of it, like, what was that transition like? I'm curious about how that happened. Like, you decided one day, that's it, I'm out, I'm going to open a media company. Like,
So it's interesting. My first boss, my trajectory is very irregular.
who'd you work for, by the way?
For David Gross,
Okay,
New Jersey,
Sure.
somebody like my hero,
sure.
taught me everything I know.
Family-owned business. He has a few facilities.
Family-owned
in Jersey, right?
business,
Yep.
old school,
Good people, yeah.
good people, somebody who really, really cares. I was selling diamonds and jewelry till I was 33. I'm 46. So I pivoted in a massive way. I was working for my dad in the industry. The industry, if you know anything about the diamond line, it's become a rat race. Everybody's chasing their tails. They're selling $50,000 diamonds at 2% margins. I had to get out. I knew nothing about healthcare. David Gross is somebody that I pray with, and we attend the same synagogue, and we know each other from town. I admired him a great deal already then. This goes back 13 years because I started in the industry 13 years ago. I worked for him for 5 years, and SkyCare Media is about 8 years old. And I approached him and I said, could you give me a shot? I got to get out of diamonds. Give me a chance. Let me work for you. Initially, he said no. He said, this is a business where if you don't know how to care for people, you have no right to be in the business. I'll be a good character reference for you, he said, but I don't mix business and pleasure. You have no familiarity with my industry. Try something else. I actually did, and I got rejected from all kinds of companies. David's Cookies all the way to like Home and Stone on Coney Island Avenue in Brooklyn. They
Well,
sell
so you
them.
were really a free agent.
I was all
You were
over
testing
the
the
place.
waters with everybody.
Test-
You had
Testing the
enough of
waters.
47th Street.
I had enough of 47th Street.
Wow.
I would have done anything. And at one point, I badgered him enough. I'll never forget, it was Purim. He sends me a text message. He says, okay, go meet with Marty. Marty is an administrator, also old school, an amazing, amazing person at Regency Heritage in Somerset, New Jersey, and let's see what we can do. He took a chance on me when nobody else would. And that's because he's brilliant. He sees things people don't see. And I guess it worked out for him. He started me as a concierge. I was the guy that massaged all of the post-acute admissions from the hospital. And then I worked my way up to an admissions director, and then I became an administrator. I got my license. I would go to different facilities on weekends, on Sundays, do floor rounds. I promised him 5 years. I gave him a 5-year commitment. My word was my honor. We didn't sign any documents. He taught me everything I know, literally. My acumen, everything I learned, everything I developed was from him and from the people closest to him. One of his biggest strengths, he knows how to delegate. So he actually surrounds himself with amazing people. I got offers during the 5 years, and I wouldn't entertain anything, of course. On my 5th anniversary, I approached him. I said, now what? So he says to me,
He was paying you the same amount throughout the 5 years?
incremental increase.
So he gave you slight
Yeah,
increases,
he was-
especially when you became licensed.
Right.
And
Got me a car, became...
you took over the facility as the administrator at some point?
I didn't. I was that guy that would be like the equivalent of a roving administrator. So I wasn't the hands-on administrator in the building, but I would go from building to building, trying to do floor rounds, see where there's gaps that need to be filled, make sure everybody was doing their jobs.
You became like a regional.
Like a regional.
Managing multiple.
Like the equivalent
I'm curious,
of region.
in the 5 years, I'm always curious about this. How long did it take for you to become valuable for him?
It's an excellent question. I would love to say probably within the first half year, definitely after a year.
Okay.
And it's to his credit because
Yeah.
he didn't hold back. In other words, we had monthly meetings, we had quarterly meetings. The healthcare industry is predicated. Everything is about data. It's data driven. So whether it's your utilization review meeting once a week, where you discuss your post-acute admissions and when they're going to plateau, and when the rehab team together with the social service team thinks that they may baseline and be required actually to go home, or a quarterly meeting to talk about marketing initiatives, etc. Everything is data driven. So we would have meetings, and he would assess on a regular basis, where's Judah, where's he, and if he didn't feel like I was keeping up, the pace, he would teach me, and he would let me learn really on his dime.
So at year number 5, you've given him 4 good years.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you're coming over to him.
I come over to him and I says, so now what? And this is the amazing thing about him. My thought at the time was this conversation go any one of 2 directions. He can either elevate me, give me some sort of, I don't know, sometimes people get distributions and they get some small interest in
Profit sharing.
I didn't even know at the time. Or you can actually be elevated so that you incorporate new responsibilities, thereby making yourself more valuable to justify a higher salary. But he says to me, look, I love you. You're an amazing employee, you're an amazing asset, but your job description requires and mandates that you get paid up to a certain amount. And at that cap, at that ceiling, you could be the best in the world at what you do, but it's like the Peter principle, right? You're only so good up to the threshold of where the job description really inherently lies. And then after that, you could be a better administrator, a better regional, but you're inherently limited.
Did you say Peter principle?
Yeah.
You're familiar with this?
No.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, I'll tell the Peter principle. Well, it's not a great analogy. It's not an exact analogy, but the
still
Peter
love to learn
principle
what it is, yeah.
stipulates everybody's got their threshold of competency. So the analogy I'd give you is, you imagine you have a guy who's flipping burgers, right? He's great. He's doing an amazing job. The next guy can only flip 5 burgers in 20 minutes. This guy's doing 20. So he's really good because he's increasing revenue for his owner. The owner, comes together one day with his partner. He says, we got to elevate this guy. He's not doing, his value isn't in flipping. Let's put him at the cashier. Now we're giving him responsibility with real money. He's awesome. They put him at the cashier. He's doling out change. He's getting customers in and out very, very quickly. So they meet again. They say, this guy's even better than this new job. We got to elevate him. So they put him in the back office. Now he's in charge of purchasing, AP, and the guy implodes. Not only does he move backwards, not only does he regress vis-a-vis where he was before, but he implodes. The whole thing just blows up. The question is why? What happened? Maybe he shouldn't be as good because he's out of his element, but the whole thing should go bust. The answer is the Peter principle, which says everybody's got their threshold of competency. Up to that point, they could be better job, do it better, do it fast, do it quicker. But the minute you're asking them to simply to exceed where they're at, it implodes because they're not equipped. So I was using it in a different framework. I'm saying the job itself demands a certain salary package. And when you hit that cap, you could be the best in the world at doing that job, but the job itself doesn't allow for increased
Simply
revenue.
because they can replace you
Correct.
with somebody younger who needs less money to do the
Correct.
same job. Maybe not as good as you.
Right.
They'll also get there. They'll build up, but he can't justify paying you just an endless amount and keep going up when he can find somebody else to do that
Right.
list of responsibilities for a lot less, which is usually the time to separate ways and say, I have reached my cap. It served you well until now. You've served me. Thank you. This was a good arrangement. And here's where I go embark on my own journey and buy my own nursing home. It's
Right.
typically how it would go, but you
I
didn't
didn't
go
do
that
that.
direction.
He says to me, look, you've developed your acumen during the 5 years that you've been here. You've developed your acumen with respect to online marketing. When I started, the internet was, relatively speaking, in its infancy in terms of healthcare. Owners didn't, they were scared about the wild, wild west that is the internet. They were afraid, with HIPAA, we don't want to be online. We're putting ourselves out there. People are going to get, they're going to get familiar with ownership, or, we're not going to be able to put our best foot forward, and so on and so forth. I developed my acumen there, where I started blogging. I would create these authoritative articles to bring in more and more traffic, and it became very relevant because prior to my time in the healthcare industry working for David Gross, the referrals were very, very traditional. You had your medical director who was getting a stipend from the building. He or she had entree in the hospital, the feeder hospitals. Patients spent 3 nights. They had a qualifying hospital stay. They were then ready for a discharge to a post-acute rehab for short-term rehab. The hospitals have a mandate to give 3 options to the family. And basically, whoever was getting greased by the nursing home that also had the ear of the family at the hospital would subtly or not so subtly direct traffic to the facility of their choice. And that's kind of how it worked, and that's why nursing homes relied on stipends. And
But the hospitals were supposed to be neutral.
Correct.
In which nursing home the patient
Correct.
goes to, give them their choices.
Right.
And let the family decide. But that's not what was
That's
happening.
not what was happening.
Everybody had sort of a favorite, and everybody had a place where they would steer the patient towards. And it
Right.
was your job as the nursing home to be on that list, on that good list.
Right.
And your marketer's job was to build those relationships.
Build those relationships. Then what happened? Hospitalists became a big thing. Hospitalists are people who have no allegiance to any particular nursing home, to any SNF. They work typically at the hospitals. A lot of them work in the emergency room. So they start following patients, and they follow them from the hospital all the way through to the discharge. So what ended up happening is now you have a disconnect because the primary care physician who's been seeing that patient in the community for forever and then followed the patient when they were admitted to the hospital, post-hip fracture, knee replacement, what have you, and then directed the patient to the nursing home of their choice because they also get a stipend there. Now they got cut off from said patient because the hospitalists took over. And the hospitalists have no allegiance. They don't care about any particular facility. So now all bets are off.
Well, they care a little bit.
A little bit.
They want to make sure the facility that they're sending to
Is going to care.
is going to the point that they're not going to send the patient back.
Right.
Because they get penalized. But that came later.
That came later. The
came later.
rehospitalization.
The rehospitalization.
The Medicare
came,
ding.
right.
You're absolutely right. So before we can get to that, but before that, all of a sudden now nursing homes can no longer rely heavily on just paying medical directors who are doctors in the community and also have privileges at the hospital. So what ends up happening is the families themselves are going online in droves, more and more, to do their due diligence because they can't rely on the hospitalists. They don't have a relationship with the hospitalists. Hospitalist is not the primary care physician in the community. Families, the children next of kin, they're not familiar with these people. They don't trust them. They don't know them. So they're going on the internet and they're clicking, typing in any conceivable permutation search query related to the buzzwords, the bread and butter keywords that these nursing homes rely on for traffic. And 3 generations minimally, right? Because we're living longer than ever. So now you have baby boomers, Generation Xers, millennials. They're all going online. Many of them aren't visiting the nursing home either. They live in a different state. Mom is in an assisted living here in the community.
They're doing it all remotely.
All remotely. So now nursing homes are starting to realize, hey, we need to exist online. Not only do we need to exist, but our footprint has to be pristine. We need to look good, smell good, because it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes you say, well, if the nursing home has a really bad reputation with a terrible CMS rating, they'd be better off not having any visibility online. No news is good news. But that's like an ostrich with its head in the sand, because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when the nursing home gets pulled up online.
And they will find another nursing
And they
home
will
that
find
does have
another.
their display in a much nicer way, and
Correct.
they're going to get the business.
Correct. So David Gross, I segued and I digress, but this is what's important. He says to me, you've developed that acumen. You've done all this digital marketing.
Manually. On the ground, in
on
person.
the ground, in person, on the internet, from our facility, whether blogging, whether social media, 4 major platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of them have their place. And all of that digital marketing to bring eyeballs to us. Why don't you parlay that into an independent, full-blown marketing agency to the healthcare industry? I'll support you in it. I'll invest my effort, my time, my training. I'll give you the gumption and the impetus to get this off the ground. You'll be great at it. And that's exactly what I did.
Really?
My brother-in-law
So
got
he
involved
became
with
your
it.
partner?
He didn't become my partner, which makes
More
it
like a
all the more
mentor, it sounds like,
astounding,
right.
more like a
Yeah,
mentor.
yeah.
Wow.
Makes
Kudos
it more
to him.
astounding. Kudos to him. He had no vested interest other than looking to help, to train, and the continued mentorship. There
Wow,
was no
what a
financial-
guy.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So
Purely for you to become successful. And this is a situation where you're leaving him, right? He's sending you out the door, but he's setting you up at the same time.
correct. He says, I can't keep
I
you
can pay you more.
on salary. I can't pay you more. And by the way, not only can I not pay you more, but it's a shame for you to stay even if I could. You're worth more on your own, and so I'm going to help you make it happen. So he didn't just cut the cord. He supported me on the way out, and I built this company with that level of support and confidence because let's face it, I was always an employee. It's a scary venture. It's the fear of the unknown. As an employee, you're on salary. You get a paycheck at the end of the week or at the end of the month or bi-monthly. A lot to be said for that.
Sure.
This is the conundrum. Everybody says salary, ownership. And then the owners tell the employees, hey, it's very lonely at the top. And when you have trouble with income, revenue, you got to pay. Payroll doesn't stop. And then who takes the hit in tough times? Who's got to tighten the belt? The owner. So I was scared going from a steady salary to starting a business, and he helped me. And I started SkyCare Media. Initially, we were doing just digital marketing. So we were doing search engine optimization. We were doing social media. We were doing reputation management on some of these major platforms like caring.com and aplaceformom.com, wellness.com. These are all the equivalent of like TripAdvisor for hotels. This would be the equivalent for people looking for a solution for an elderly loved one who needs help. And basically that was what we were doing to make our clients shine. And then subsequently, as we evolved and as we morphed, we undertook new responsibilities. We got into the graphic design game. We got into the traditional marketing with, rebrands and flyers and trifolds and bifolds and tchotchkes, because I got into a place where people were coming to me and they were saying, we want not only the social media, but we need somebody to rebrand. And then I'm looking and I'm saying, taking a lay of the land, I'm saying, if I'm going to push them away to my competition because I can't service this need, and I'm not a turnkey operation,
You got to have the full ecosystem.
Got to have the
of
full
services.
ecosystem.
Right.
Otherwise, you're
Everything under one
encouraging them
roof.
to look elsewhere. Right.
Yeah.
So I started doing all of that stuff as well. But it started from internet marketing. And really, that's where it's at. And I always say, if you have a terrible reputation online, it's like somebody plastering a billboard on every major thoroughfare saying this place, you'll excuse me, and it sits there in perpetuity online till the cows come home. It's incredibly damaging because I was mentioning earlier that this is a data-driven industry. How do you quantify lost revenue when you don't even know you squandered the opportunity, right? In other words, what do I mean by that? The people who go online looking for a nursing home and they hit the Google business page and one review after the other, if you want your dad to die, literally, we're not talking about a burger joint,
I've
a
seen
nail
those.
salon.
Yeah.
Healthcare is vicious. It's
Yeah.
brutal when the reviews are nasty because it's not just like, oh, the burger was cold or they chipped my nail. It's like, oh, I wound up finding dad in septic shock
Yeah.
on a weekend where you had like agency, temps, people on that were there per diem who don't give a hoot. And my dad died, Maybe it's exaggerated. Maybe it's even fabricated. Who knows?
You know, it's
But in the
funny
court of public opinion,
Yeah.
It's out there.
it's incredibly damaging. Those people don't bother calling the admissions director. They just say a pox on this place. I'm not placing dad there. So again, it's lost revenue. You don't even know you squandered. So that's why it's so important, making sure that the nursing home has a great reputation online, because if they don't, it's like they're pouring water into a cup. All the traditional marketing, all the liaisons going out, and they're doing a job fair, and now they go to a church, and they grease the skids, they're giving gift baskets and whatnot. But it's like the cup that they're pouring into has this gaping hole on the bottom. The hole is the internet presence that's lackluster or terrible. And they're wondering, how come we're not filling our beds?
Yeah.
What's the matter with census? And they don't realize because they really don't look on online. If you'll permit, I'll give you. Earlier I was telling you about TripAdvisor for hotels. I always say hotels and nursing homes have a lot in common. The hotels have no problem selling the oceanfront, rooms overlooking those are easy sell. But the side of the buildings overlooking like the neighbor's parking lot, the toilet, they're not so popular. How do they fill those rooms? It's not easy. Nursing homes, same thing. I was an admissions director. When you take a tour as a prospective admission, the admissions director shows that family the money room, flat screen TV, private room with the fancy
makeshift room,
with the
model
bedspread,
room.
the model room.
Yeah.
They don't take him down to the basement, show him the 3-bedded room where by today's regulations, you mentioned regulations earlier, those rooms would never fly. But because they were grandfathered in from like who knows when, so now you have middle beds and the pipes are sticking out of the ceilings, they stay far away from those rooms. Those rooms are tough sells, just like the hotel rooms on the side of the building, right? How do you fill those beds? So it's funny, they did a study. There was a chain of hotels. It's a fabulous study. It wasn't too long ago. I don't know if it was a Ritz-Carlton. These are independently owned hotels. And there was one that opened up on the West Coast. Stunning, stunning hotel. And they said in line with the ribbon cutting ceremony, opening up this brand new hotel, they said, let's put a full-page ad for 5 months in the Robb Report. Are you familiar with the Robb Report?
Sure. I am not.
Robb Report is a magazine for the uber wealthy. Comes out.
That's why I'm not familiar.
No. We probably have it because it's coffee table reading.
Yeah, I was going to say, we grew up reading it. You want to feel rich.
You want to feel rich, or it's amazing. You know,
I don't like to see what I'm missing out on. I like to live on my level.
Right. Things we'll never be able to afford in a lifetime.
Okay.
And it comes out once a month. You're talking about like private jets and yachts and that Patek Philippe
Islands
watch.
for sale.
Yeah, like where you're like, oh, should I buy the watch for $300,000 or should I keep saving for that mortgage for the home? You know. So they said, let's put a full page ad in the Robb Report. A full-page ad in the Robb Report for a hotel, I wouldn't say it's like on Super Bowl commercial level in terms of the ad spend, but it's way up there. You're talking about a few $100,000.
Wow.
And then 5 months later, they get together in the corporate office because they're just not filling the beds, the side of the hotel, those rooms overlooking the parking lot. They're just not filling those rooms. And they're scratching their heads. They're like, what's going on? We have an ad in the Robb Report every month. We have a stunning hotel. It's brand new, right? So somebody there had an epiphany. They said, anybody been online recently, like since we opened this place, to see what customers are saying on Expedia or TripAdvisor, just like a place for mom and caring.com for nursing homes and so on and so forth? So they said, no. So they said, let's go online right here from the screen. Let's see what people are saying. They were being excoriated. They were being flamed up the wazoo, you'll excuse me, at least twice a week on all of these websites. So I know what you're thinking. You're saying, like, what could people be saying about the place? Brand new, stunning, gorgeous. How do you complain about a brand new facility, a brand new hotel? So the answer is the complaints had nothing to do with the amenities, the aesthetics, nothing. The complaints took on one theme. Basically, everybody was saying, before you become a guest at the hotel, they wine you and dine you. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. It's all wonderful. The minute you put your credit card in the machine, now everybody's uppity. They talk down to you. They talk to you like a prude. You know, it's like a second class. That was one complaint. The other complaint was everything in the hotel is an extra fee. You know, you want to take an Evian water bottle from the counter in the room, $5. You want a cabana by the poolside, few $100s. You want an extra towel for the beach. So the consensus was, if we're putting down $1,000 a night for a hotel room, I don't want you to start nickel and diming me. Everything is an extra charge. Go around the corner of the other hotel, maybe 5 years old, may not be as nice. The amenities may not be up to, but at least you'll feel like a king. So what did they do? They said, oh, my God, we've been pouring all this money into the Robb Report. That's the cup with the hole on the bottom. And we didn't realize on the internet, nobody's watching the house. And we're losing revenue. And we don't even know we're losing it because people they're just not coming. So they said, to heck with the Robb Report. They took the money out. They paid a fraction of that to mine their reputation online, whether they did it in-house or they hired a company. I don't know. It wasn't. And within a short period of time, they changed the narrative. And they were able to turn things around because they plugged the hole. It's the same thing with nursing homes. And that's what we were doing with Sky Care Media, and that's what we do until today. CEU Healthcare Events, that's a baby that was born 5 years ago. I'm
going to jump in.
Okay.
I'm going to make that connection. Okay, I'm taking a total guess here because obviously the next question is, how did you get to the CEU events? That's the conference, right? But it's very in line actually with what you're doing because your whole essence is connecting the consumer with the server, right? With the proprietor, with the nursing home that's providing the service, the care, right? And you're providing that bridge to them so they can each have visibility and to see what they're doing, right? So you're really that connection, right? You're making this party look good so that the other party looks at it and says, oh, this is what we need. This looks appealing and this is attractive to me and I want to go there. So you're really connecting the two. I think the CEU events is very similar to that. You're really connecting the operators with the suppliers, with the vendors. You're putting them into the same room, and you're providing an environment that everybody feels good and everything is nice. People are having a good time. You're creating an ambiance. You're creating an aesthetic that everybody is getting what they need out of it, and you're putting it all under one roof. And that's kind of what SkyCare does. That's what you've been doing. And I think this is the new wave as well in our industry, is that it's very digital. Everything is very, like you said, you're not really going down to the places. You know, you have parents that have kids all over the country, and they don't want to all come together. Let's go searching. But you go online and you're searching. That's what everybody does. First thing you do, you whip out your phone, you go to Google. First thing you do is, you go online, start testing different websites, checking things out. It's like, if you don't have this at your disposal today, you're not just 1 or 2 steps behind. You're decades behind. You're losing to other people that are so way advanced than you are, that you're out of the game. You're in the minor leagues. They're all playing in the it's a different type of league that you're playing in.
Right.
So I want to say that connection, the CEU events formulated in your mind from, this is what I do sort of in the digital world. Let me also do this in person in the industry that I'm in, making that connection. Does that make sense?
100%. You said something brilliant a minute ago. You said that in this industry, it's out of sight, out of mind, right? Everything is digital. And there's an inherent problem there. It's out of sight, out of mind. You have to increase value, but everybody is going online. So that's this basic conundrum. You want to make sure that you're working online, but how do you keep that personal touch? How do you keep in touch with your consumer? That's how CEU events came to be. I had a real problem. What was my problem? SkyCare Media is all about, it's predicated, everything is done online. So for all intents and purposes, we meet the client, we sell them, word of mouth, whatever it shouldn't be. But then when we pick up the baton and we actually run with the football, everything is done in my office, over the computer, and I seldom get to see my clients. So I started saying to myself, this is not a good recipe, because in today's, marketing, today's industry, irrespective of what you're doing, selling products, services, there's no more, loyalty in business. Everything is about, unfortunately, I don't buy this, I don't believe in it, but it's all about, what's the best value, and if I can get somebody to do the same thing for a little bit less money, you're always at a disadvantage if you're out of sight, out of mind, because your competition is just waiting in the wings to pull the rug out, and if they can sell the same service for $2 less, you're stuck. So I'm saying to myself, I need to see my clients, because on that lonely, cold winter day, if I'm not there to grease the skids, or I don't at least say hello, it's so nice to see you, and that personal touch, and somebody else comes in and works their magic, I stand to lose a customer.
Yep.
So I said, you know what? This CEU concept, I get a chance to create an event once a year. Some people do it more often. There are companies that only do events. Because this is not my primary business, I said once a year is adequate, and we could talk about that, why I believe that's a great recipe. But inherently, I said, if I do an event once a year, and I bring together not only vendors, but also my clients, many of my clients, or many people who I hope will one day become my clients, and they get a chance to see me, I get a chance to say thank you, I get a chance to give them a great time. So even if I don't make a dime on CEU events, even if I break even, some would argue even if I lose money, it still has the value for me, because it's like you said, it's hand in glove with my core business. Why wouldn't I do it? It's such an easy extension to my core business model.
Yep.
So that was one motivation. There were obviously I thought it would be a lucrative model. What I tried.
Are you making money from the CEU events?
Yeah. I think it's unique, because you know what? There are these massive. You mentioned Zimit earlier. There are these massive.
He's been around, by the way.
Yeah, Mark is.
I think one of the
guy.
longest. He's been doing this conference how many years? 20 years? 18 years?
2 decades, yeah.
A long, long time, and he's been very consistent, and he's been very successful for a long time. And he also, like you, has his core business. This is not what he does. I think also one show a year, and that's it. And it's very much synergistic to what his business is, and he makes the show about reimbursements, right? That's the business that he has.
Correct.
So you guys are actually very similar in that sense.
Very similar, but
yeah.
But different.
You obviously cater to something different.
Right.
But you have that same model where you have your business, and then you have this ancillary thing that you do as well that feeds into your business.
Right. What I want to do, what inspired me about people like Mark and shows like Zimit, like HCA&J in New Jersey, the Healthcare Association of New Jersey, and other national events. Those national events are so popular. They're empowering. They teach. They give you an opportunity to see people you don't see ordinarily throughout the course of the year. And it's an amazing networking event. The problem is, a lot of these events are over a few-day period. You got to travel. Some of them are expensive. And it's not for everybody. You know, some of the administrative level people, types, can't get there, whether because it's prohibitive in terms of the expense, or frankly, it's just logistically impossible because they have a building they need to manage. Now, the humdrum events that occur sporadically throughout the year, in terms of CEU requirements, CEU basically stands for Continuing Education University, I think. And, administrators require a certain amount of credits every year to maintain their licensure. They have to be up on regulations, regulatory stuff. For example, it used to be you had rug scoring for short-termers. Today you have PDPM. It's a totally different animal. So without that continuing education, you fall behind. So it's like doctors and lawyers. So we got credentialed with a governing body, National Administrators Board, NAB, to offer credits. And we wanted to be that daily, that day event that occurs locally, but to the next level. So we wanted to take the national concept and make a day event once a year that would mimic the vibe, the energy, the excitement of those national events. So it would no longer just be about administrators like straggling into a CEU saying, there's nobody who wants to be here, but we have no choice. We got to get the credits, and it's boring as all hell, and there's no entertainment, there's no vibe, there's nothing like that, which unfortunately is the case for some of these events that occur throughout the year. I said, let me take it to a next level. I'm going to do an event that's going to offer credits, but it's not just going to appeal to the administrators. It's going to appeal to owners, operators, C-level executives. Why? They don't need the credits. They own the buildings, but they want to be there because it's got a great energy. It's a great day out. It's got great food, catering, all kinds of entertainment. Now, the vendors want to be there too, because with the humdrum events, vendors don't want to be caught dead at these events because there's no revenue, there's no prospects. Some of them say, now I personally think every administrator is a great prospect. I was an administrator myself. I love administrators. You mentioned earlier, every administrator is a future owner.
True, but unfortunately, a lot of administrators don't have executive decision-making power with vendors specifically, because that's driven mostly by the corporate office.
Right.
They're the ones from the top making those decisions, so their hands are a little bit tied.
Right.
But there are some administrators, a lot of administrators, that they give the autonomy to the facility, that you're an executive administrator, you can do whatever you please, and let each facility do what they want. So, we tell our reps that are selling, we tell them all the time, like, don't underestimate meeting with an administrator, especially even if it's a big group. A good gateway to get into this group is by convincing one of the administrators about your products and services, and it's valuable, and let them be your advocate to the people up top. So if they bring you in because you made an impression on them, it's very useful, and it's worked for us.
100%.
And I think that administrators don't get enough credit. At the end of the day, I believe, I've said this before on this podcast, I've said this before, and the thing is with Yissi Churns, right? Because I was asking Yissi, why is it that administrators come and go? You rarely see an administrator that's at a nursing home for 20 years, for 25 years. You don't see that a lot. They're always shifting from one nursing home to another, or they become themselves an owner, or they go like you into a different industry, not a different industry, but a different part of the industry. And what he said was they're just not getting paid enough. And I agreed with him. I think that administrators should be getting profit sharing in their buildings, in each building that they're in. I think it would be great for the owner to do that because it'll motivate the administrator.
Skin in the game.
Yeah, skin in the game. So now he has vested interest in making sure that the census stays up, making sure that they're profitable, making sure he's getting the right patients into the building, good paying patients as well. And that would be, instead of the nursing home owners being so narrow-minded and just trying to squeeze every dollar, pay as little as they can and get as much of it. This would be that's the most important person in the room. He's literally running your building. Everybody in the building reports up to this administrator. Every single director, every department is reporting. Why wouldn't this guy be the one who's technically your partner? He's technically your partner, and he's in the building. He's the one that's on the way. He's coming into the office every day. He's your eyes and ears in this building. It's beyond me why they wouldn't make these administrators at least profit share.
I think some of them do, by the way, after like a 5-year tenure.
There are certain organizations that started this
Also, you have to
trend.
remember, by the way, for the record, director of nurses also runs the building.
Not as much.
Huh?
They're running
There's a
they're running really
big
one.
question within the buildings over who is.
They're running a very important part of the nursing home, which is the patient care. Yes. But the
Yeah.
administrator oversees every aspect of what goes on in the nursing home,
Yeah.
from the maintenance to the housekeeping to the food service director. Right? They're involved in every. The director of nursing has no hand in what kind of food is being served, and that's not their department. They stick to their lane. The administrator
Michael
has to
is
know a
right,
little
I
though.
bit.
want to say that
Without a good DON, the administrator is up the creek.
Yeah. Of
Everybody
course.
says the DON is what empowers the administrator to run.
I'm saying you have
proper
two
building.
people to worry about that run your building that
Right.
actually would want profit sharing. you know?
Yeah, but the truth is that most organizations that become bigger and bigger, they usually have a CNO, like a chief nursing operator, who's a very important person who a lot of times is an equitable partner in the business.
Yeah.
So you see that they're definitely both very important pieces. But I want to shift gears for a second. By the way, your story is fascinating. I love how you started out as an administrator. And then you totally went in a different turn than a lot of others would, and you started this business, which I can say here is very successful. You have a good amount of clients and growing, and you're very good at what you do. I've had engagement with you. I've got to see it firsthand. I think you're excellent. You're amazing. But I want to talk a little bit about you. Okay, away from the professional side for a second. You seem like a very calm person. Have you ever yelled at
Tell my
anybody
wife,
before?
tell my wife.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever yelled at anybody? Like, have you ever gotten into a fist fight with someone? You seem like you're very easygoing, very, very laid back. Almost, dare I say, easy to take advantage of. You're very successful. Right, but maybe being even more aggressive, you can really build this like crazy company and get on this magazine that you were talking about, Rob Report, so that you can actually buy something from there. Like, what are your real aspirations? What's your end goal? What are you trying to really get to? Like, what's important to you?
It's an amazing question. Wow.
I threw a lot in there, by the way,
Yeah.
so you can pick apart which ones you want to run with.
Yeah, wow, that's an amazing question. I mean, look, I think the primary point to all of what we do is we want to support our families, but we also want to find personal fulfillment. How we reconcile the two is really where our greatest challenge lies. I mean, sometimes by definition, those two items don't dovetail. I mean, people tell you they're not mutually exclusive and yada, yada, and so on and so forth. But it's tough because you want to make money, so you stay late at the office. You're not present when you're at home. You're tethered to your phone. You ask me if I'd be more stern. I don't want to use the word angry. I get frustrated. I do get frustrated. A lot of it is carryover from my time on the inside, in the nursing homes, seeing families that weren't reasonable, sometimes seeing staff that just didn't pull their weight or didn't belong, working in the industry. And there's a lot of frustration there. And then there's, your familial obligations, raising children, raising family, and all of the financial obligations that come along with it. I wouldn't say that I'm this, easygoing, fluffy, fuzzy, cozy kind of guy. I try to be affable. I try to be good with people. I think it's a prerequisite. I think in order to be successful, you don't want to be that guy or that woman that alienates people. Somebody who's a terrorist to be next to is typically not winning Dale Carnegie's, what was the guy's book again? How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
You're not getting any awards in that category, but it's a struggle. I'm definitely not.
This is a cutthroat business.
It's a cutthroat business.
It almost brings the worst out in you sometimes, and you seem unscathed by everything that you've been on the inside as an administrator, and you have your own company now. Like, is the plan to blow this up and to make this as big as? Do you even want that, or do you want to sort of stay in your lane, keep things smooth, and grow a little bit? Like, what's your end goal?
I want to stay in my lane. I think in 2025, I think anybody that tries to be like a jack of all trades, I do this, I do that, they end up becoming bad at everything.
Yeah.
Instead of becoming great at everything, they're either mediocre at everything or just downright bad. Because, none of us are an octopus. We can't be in 8 different places at the same time. Industries are very, very niche oriented today. And I feel like if I don't stay in my lane, I know healthcare. That's my background. That's what I do. I'm a Polish Jew, so I still maintain my license. You know, I earned my LNHA.
You refuse to give it up.
I refuse
So
to
you're
give
still
it up.
a licensed nursing
I'm
home
still a
administrator.
licensed nursing home administrator in the state of New Jersey. In fact, you were mentioning earlier, I'll digress for a second if you'll allow it. You said something earlier that's amazing. You said, I don't know if you remember, you said ultimately the buck stops with the administrator because it's his or her license on the wall, right?
Yep.
You're saying that it's like scary almost because somebody on the bottom of that totem pole messes up, filters all the way up to the top, and the nursing home administrator gets fried because their license on the wall. After I started SkyCare Media, there were occasions where clients, a few of them I recall, a guy says to me, you know, we're in a transitional period, we're, you know, just lost an administrator looking for a new one. We know you have a license. Maybe you give us your license. Let us hang it on the wall for a couple of
Let's
weeks.
borrow it for.
Let's borrow it
yeah.
for a couple of weeks.
Uh-huh.
I said, no
No.
way, not a chance. My license on the wall. The ombudsman comes in. Hey, that guy, Gutwein. Oh, let's go get him.
For those people that don't know, by the way, it's like by law, you have to put in every elevator and everywhere you go in a facility, if you're feeling abused, neglected, just
Correct.
call this number and they'll pick up faster than 911. Literally.
Correct.
They'll have someone in the building within 24 hours to. And in some states, by the way, you were saying billboards earlier, and I was thinking that in some states, it's much easier to sue the nursing home and to win for nothing. You know, like, you feel like you were mishandled a little bit, mistreated, you sue. And you see billboards, I think in Florida.
It's the most common billboard
It's
you see.
so
Injury
unbelievable.
lawyer. You're talking about an injury
It's
lawyer?
so
Yeah,
bad.
injury lawyers, specifically in nursing
Yeah.
homes. Yeah, and
Yeah.
It's so bad today, I'll tell you, with the CMS with the state regulations requirements. I'll tell you in a second, but I just want to get back just to finish that thought. I still maintain my license, so that's my lane. You were asking about segueing into new frontiers or tackling new initiatives. I believe for me, my success is do what I do what I know, stay with SkyCare Media, stay with CEU for that once-a-year event. And my aspirations, if I can get more clients and make them happy, for me, it's not about the quantity, it's about quality. There's only few of us in this space who do what SkyCare Media does. They're all friendly competitors. I'm very content to be maybe even the smaller terms of quantity of those several companies, in terms of clients, just raw numbers, and be the one that everybody says they get it done. They don't just act as a vendor, they're almost like partners. They partner with us to give us that kind of pristine reputation we're looking for online. So that's what I want to do. I don't want to get into other stuff, and I don't think I'll be good at other stuff, frankly.
Did you try in the past?
I never tried.
Okay, good
I
for
never
you.
tried.
Yeah,
How many employees are with SkyCare today?
13.
Nice. And they're all in the office? They all come in
No,
every day?
no. We have 5 in the office, and the rest are remote. I quickly learned, it's interesting, that's a great question. When I started, I said, everybody's got to be in the office. Everybody, because quality control.
Sure.
I believe along with delegation, inevitably, somebody can call me on this. Anybody watching this podcast, listening, could call me on this. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't claim to have all the answers. A business that's successful today will have someone, or someone's, plural, working remotely.
Of course.
And not just because it's a post-pandemic world and we all learned that, we can be successful working from home or yada, yada, and so on and so forth. No, because frankly, and I'm going to say it, what people, the big elephant in the room, I can hire somebody in Bangladesh, depending on what they do. Obviously, I can't give them too much autonomy, latitude, responsibility, whatever. But I can hire somebody in Bangladesh to do light bookkeeping or what have you that will be as good as the person here locally for a fraction, literally a fraction of the price. So in terms of overhead, in terms of, being a lean,
And you don't have to
mean
pay
machine-
tariffs.
And you don't have to pay tariffs. And frankly, if you hire and fire, yes, you don't have to pay tariffs. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And if you hire and fire, you don't get blitzed with a lawsuit and you don't have to 2 weeks notice and all of that. They're there. I'm here. And so, I don't believe there's a company out there that doesn't have somebody on payroll who's working remote. So I'm proud of it.
You say not just remote, but you're saying out of the country.
Out of the country.
Overseas, you're saying.
Overseas. And they're working
Yeah.
Eastern Standard Time. We give them an extension, call SkyCare Media 101. Somebody picks up the phone immediately, working 9 to 5. somebody who can articulate in English, write emails in English. Nobody has any clue. Maybe my clients do. If they didn't, now they know, because everybody watches you guys got a great popular podcast. Maybe they're watching, now they know. The cat's out of the bag. But they think this person's working in my office. They're not. I have a few people in the Philippines,
But you are managing it all. You're a leader, and when it comes to that, and you have obviously a terrific command of the English language.
Oh, thank you.
Listening, I'm enjoying listening.
He does. You have a lot of big words.
Exactly.
He also compliments our questions every time, which I love.
Ask
by the way,
permission.
I love.
behave myself.
Yes, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Ooh, thank you. Yes, I thought of that all by myself.
I wish you used much bigger words than you ever.
I know.
Much
This is
I have a question real quick
Yeah.
about the reviews and stuff on the internet. I was in Chicago a few months ago, and I had like 6 hours to kill in the evening. I was with a few friends, and we wanted to go to a comedy club. And Chicago is pretty famous for comedy clubs. And we were Googling, comedy club near me. And we found one comedy club, and it had 4.8 star reviews, over 300 reviews. And we were so excited. Wow. Show starting in 45 minutes. We were 10 minutes away. We went there. It was the worst experience we ever had as a comedy club ever.
Was it an improv show?
Yes.
Right. So they're very famous.
But they
for that.
didn't advertise as improv. But
Right, but
what
it's
ended
a
up,
known thing.
What ended up happening was, right, and that's my point. What ended up happening is all the local comedians were the ones giving the reviews. So you didn't really get a flavor for what it's really like until you actually showed up. So I'm curious, like, what happens in the industry when people give review? Your job, so to speak, is to make sure that the reviews are good and you're part of that whole that you described. So there is an unauthentic way also to fill that hole and getting reviews and positive, things. If somebody were to ask you, and I get this question a lot, oh, you're in the industry. I have a great aunt or someone that just broke their hip coming out of the hospital. What nursing home should they go to? Where do you guide them? How would you, the person that is responsible for the reviews online, how do you guide them to find the right facility for their loved one?
That's a great question.
It's a great question.
By the way, I'm going to
great-
say it now. That is a great question.
It is a great question.
Because everybody at some point has to look into a nursing home for a
Right,
loved one or an
right.
assisted living for a loved one.
Right.
People will say, "Oh, the food's great,"
Yeah.
and then, but is it really?
What is the
Yeah.
best? What's
Yeah.
what's the
best approach?
What's some of the tips and tricks?
And by extension, the reason your question is so valuable is because what you essentially experienced is, and you were nice about it, you're saying, like, there's a disconnect. I got a 4.8, overall rating out of 5 for this comedy club.
With
And then I
hundreds and
show-
hundreds of
Yeah,
reviews.
and then I show up and it's a dud. So who wrote these reviews?
Right.
Is it somebody's mother-in-law on payroll in the back room churning out rah, rah, rah? So, inherently it casts now everything is suspect. You're saying, I can't trust reviews because I showed up and my personal experience was so far removed from the reviews that I read. So the answer is, I don't believe there's any one platform that would be the end-all and be-all when it comes to making a nursing home look good online. Yes, people will tell you the Google My Business page by far and away is the most important of those platforms. Whether a place for mom, caring.com, wellness.com, senioradvisor.com. To me, cumulatively, in totality, all of them together paint a really good picture. Now, let me just ask you this. You're talking about legitimate reviews. Are they authentic? It's a struggle. I ask you this. In your private life, in our private lives, if we're looking to buy Nike sneakers, I don't know, you go on Amazon, you see 2 sellers. Now, first off, you got to find the seller. Same thing with the sniff. If they don't exist on page 1 for those search terms and they're buried on page 52, they're not selling.
No.
It's just those nursing homes that come up on the top page 1, either because of search engine optimization or pay-per-click campaigns, which is a whole other animal we could talk or not talk about.
Whoever even gets to page 4 or 5, like what's the point of that? Even?
It's nobody.
Yeah.
Literally nobody. So what ends up happening is you find 2 sellers on Amazon. One seller is on Amazon from 3 months ago. They started or whatever, January of 2025. During that time, they've racked up 300 reviews, 5 stars, all of them. And they all sound the same. They all read the same. Best thing since apple pie. And, it's like verbatim. It's almost like somebody just cut, copy, and paste. Then you find the other guy. The other guy's been on Amazon since 2017. Maybe they don't have 300 reviews. They have 250 reviews. They don't have a 5-star rating. Every once in a while, they get flamed, and then somebody immediately gets on, takes ownership. We're so sorry that you had bad experience. Call us at this and this number. We want to make things right for you. Ask yourself, who do you think you're going to give your business to? Is it the guy that's in business 3 months with 300 reviews, all of them positive and they all sound the same? Or is it the one that's in business, has longevity, 2017, fewer reviews, but they're all unique, they're all written differently, they all actually mimic what seems to be a very personal experience? And when they mess up, we're all human. Everyone's entitled to mess up every once in a while. They take ownership, right? Subliminally, most of us would give the business to the one that looks real. And the one that looks real is the one that does get flamed every once in a while, the one that doesn't have a 5-star overall rating, the one where the verbiage is unique and specific. Same thing with nursing homes. Families get a feel for it. They go on, and same thing with comedy clubs. They go online, you look at the reviews. First off, some of the reviews have so much specificity where the person's actually saying, I do business with them. I'm a vendor. Of course a vendor is going to give a 5-star review. He's ingratiating himself. He wants to stay in the good graces of the nursing home. Now, I distinguish between employees and vendors. Employees today, it's very important. In a post-pandemic world, staffing is a major issue in nursing homes. Major. You can't fill a building. You can have all of the admissions in the world. You can have a hospital that loves you so much they're going to send you all their patients. If you don't have the required ratio of aides to patients, you cannot fill your beds. It's craziness. It's like the owners are saying, give me staff. I have the patients. It's like I'm leaving money on the table. So when you get positive reviews from employees who say, I've been in this building 10 years. I love the owners. I love my, administrator. I love my social service director. It resonates. It goes a long way. But you get a feel for the reviews. And you know what's authentic. And you know what's fake. Not just for the positive, even the negative reviews. That disgruntled, terminated employee who you just fired, who gets online and, jumps on you and then, gets the whole family to jail, like 5-yard penalty in football for piling on. They all pile on. So I think over time we get a feel for that. What's real, what isn't real. But it is a struggle, and reviews do matter.
And you got to do the work. You got to scroll through it, and you got to read them.
You got to read.
And then you just use your judgment as to how, how real it is. What kind of truth is being told. And if it's something you really care about, you'll read the reviews, and you'll take the time to do it. And you're right. If somebody had even less than 200, they had 50 reviews, but each of those reviews, looks like somebody took the time to outline exactly what their experience was. And I look at it and I say, wow, this is great.
100%.
That's where I'm going to go. Not with the guy that's got 1,000 reviews. And everyone's like, great service, done, great job.
Or stars without text, by the way.
Right.
Google gives the Google algorithm gives more credence to a review that is connected with textual.
Yeah.
So when you post a review on Google, you have an opportunity to give stars, 1 through 5.
Exactly.
And you could write your experience.
Right.
A lot of people are lazy.
Just do the stars.
Yeah, they get online at 5 stars, 1 star, and they walk away.
I just did that yesterday.
Yeah.
I did somebody sent me the link afterwards to give them a review, and I just did the stars. I did 5 stars. I said submit. I gotta write stuff down right now, and that's worthless because it took me a second. I didn't really care. I'm like, what's the big? I gave him 5 stars.
Right.
But if I would have actually had to articulate words and describe why I gave whatever I gave, people can read through that in between the lines and see how authentic it really is.
Right. So it doesn't just resonate with the consumer. It resonates with the algorithm. The algorithm pumps up those reviews because the perception is if somebody took the pain and the time to actually, provide context around their experience, not just, 5 stars, 1 star, this is legit. This is legit. So that's why we always encourage our clients. We always say, don't just get 5-star reviews. Make sure you tell your happy customers to take a couple of seconds and qualify the 5-star review by writing what it is they're happy about. And by the same token, when somebody's unhappy and they leave a 1-star review without the text, it's not nearly as damaging as the 1-star review where there's like a paragraph of text and it's all in caps. Dad was wallowing in his own feces, excuse me for using that example, but it's a real example.
It's a real thing.
Very, very damaging.
Yeah. Do you have a sales team? Do you have anybody that goes out and does marketing for you?
I'm the sales team.
Just you?
I'm the sales team, yeah.
And what's your techniques? What's your tactics? How are you?
I try to be authentic. I try not to oversell. I try to...
Yeah, but how are you meeting people other than the CEU
Other than the CEU event?
Yeah, how are you actually branding yourself and getting your name out there?
You know what? It's a lot of word of mouth, I'll be honest.
A lot of word
It's
of
a
mouth.
lot of word of mouth. A lot of clients who do right by me. The best form of charity, they say, is to
A referral.
actually a referral, is
Yeah.
to pass it along.
It's also the best compliment.
Best compliment. So those are my biggest advocates. I mean, the people, whether we've built a website for them and the website is front and center and somebody says, oh, wow, that's beautiful. You know, we're very
did that,
heavily
yeah.
involved in websites. It's amazing. I didn't always build websites, but now it's probably like one of the core components to my business. Every nursing home, you were mentioning before, like in internet years, if you're a little bit archaic, you're like prehistoric.
Yes.
And it's the same thing with a website. If your
You get
website,
totally sidelined.
you're like, so we do a lot of websites, and it's like word of mouth. Somebody
If I see a website that looks antiquated, it looks old, next. I'm next. Everything about you
yes,
feels that way.
you extrapolate.
It's such a it's a bad. It turns me off.
Correct. You're saying
it rubs me the wrong way. Like if your website looks like in the old text, the certain.
then the care must be reflected.
Exactly. Like is everything? Are your machines that you have also from 1960s?
Right. Exactly.
Like everything just looks like dinosaurs. Like I'm not interested in that.
Speaking of dinosaurs, by the way, and we have to close up soon, so I just want to mention this. The virtual check-in system, I think, to me, is the best advancement to reviews and understanding what's going on in your building, whether it's a hotel, whether it's your office, whether it's a nursing home, as opposed to having a book where you write down a sign-in book, having a virtual check-in so that they can text you afterwards, how was your experience? And taking that positive experience and then putting that on the internet.
100%. It's even more than that. The reason you're so right about that is because these check-in systems provide much greater value than just the empowerment and the text message. I'll tell you how. It's unbelievable. Nursing homes get a bad rap from the 5% of consumers who are upset. 95% of the time, our industry, there's so much to be said for the people. We love these colleagues of ours. We know all of them,
A lot
right?
of good. Yeah.
There's a lot of good.
I don't know if I'd be
So
I don't know if I'd go
complimentary?
at 95.5.
All right.
That's a little generous, but I hear what you're saying. A majority is
Majority.
happy.
51.
Happy.
Majority are happy.
But then it's live and let live. The family goes home. They say, "Oh, it's been great,"
Right.
And you never hear from them again until like Allscript sends the facility a new referral. Oh, the patient's back at the hospital. You get a cure ban. Oh my God, do they have 100? How many Medicare days do they have left? It's out of sight, out of mind. Nobody wants to be in the facility. Let's face it, right? The 5% of people who are ticked off, they have an agenda. They're going to go online. They're going to flame the facility. So they're the ones that are writing these Google reviews. Now, what this kiosk that you're talking about, Michael, what it does is it basically provides a closed ecosystem whereby it solicits somebody for a review, positive or negative, but in such a way that if the person says, I am ticked off, I am really unhappy, instead of pushing them anywhere near the important online pages like Google, like A Place for Mom, it sends them in this vacuum via text message feedback directly to the administrator, to the social service director. It says, oh, your feedback is really important. They may think it's wafting off into the hereafter in cyberspace somewhere and it's doing this irreparable harm to the facility. It's not. It's going to only the people who are on a need-to-know basis, and they ameliorate. They deal with it. Hopefully, they take care of it, which is great. And the 95% of people who are happy
is going to the right places.
It pushes them to the Google business page. So it parses.
And the most interesting part is the book of signing in.
It doesn't do that.
It was only created if, God forbid, there's a fire in the building. You know who's in the building. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
When people don't sign out.
Is that the reason why they have that check-in?
Yeah, that's the original.
It's not just in nursing homes. It's really in any business. They require you to check.
You want to know who's in the building.
They want to know who's in the
That's
building.
why it always boggles my mind when people don't sign out. Like, what's the whole
They
point?
do. They just write Mickey Mouse. You know how many times I've seen signed by Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse.
I'm saying it's using.
I just thought they're being nosy, or they want to keep a record of who came in that day and like to see the foot traffic that they have.
I'm just thinking it's using technology and making advancements, which is what I really enjoy. And by the way, that's the sponsor of today's podcast, Tapestry. And
we love Tapestry.
Tapestry is a great company that's taking advancements of technology and maximizing care in nursing
using
homes.
artificial intelligence.
And even
they're
at home.
They're one of the first to do it, to really do it in a way that they can provide actual information to the nurses, so they can apply that for the kind of care that they give.
They're adapting radar where they can detect where a resident is and if they've gone to the restroom or if they, God forbid, fell. And using Israeli technology, nonetheless, by the way, which is fascinating stuff. So I love all those kind of things, using technology to advance healthcare, advance senior cares. And you're doing a lot of it in your world. And I have to say congratulations to your CEU kickoff that you had 5 years ago. It's doing amazing.
Thank you for being a part of it this year.
Hey, I think
invaluable.
people are only coming for the panel.
You were amazing. My kids loved you.
I heard he was put
Some
up
of
to
the-
the spot last second. I heard he wasn't
Thank
even.
God it worked out
He was
well. We
unbelievable.
filled up the room, and it was really, really nice.
Michael's good at that. He's
And
good
really,
at-
congratulations on everything you did. Before we let you go, Jude, I have to ask you, because we always ask our guests before we let them leave, is if you can pick a guest to be on our podcast after this experience, who do you think would add value, and who would you pick?
Wow. I would say my mentor that we talked about so much at the beginning of the interview. I would be highly doubtful whether he'd come on. He's one of these
Old school.
rather modest.
That's the ones I really want to hear from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gotta be honest with
so
you.
much knowledge.
Okay, you
to
can call
share.
him and ask him, and there won't be no harm in doing that.
So much knowledge to
But
share.
let's make believe he says no.
If he said no, and this is relegated to the industry, right?
Doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be the
No,
industry.
just someone that inspires you, someone that you can will lend our growth of our journey to.
Basically, well, who's the biggest celebrity you know? Is what we're asking.
We're doing name dropping now.
Right. That's another way. That's another way to ask it.
We could always edit it out. Well, I would say some of the people that really are at the forefront of technological advancements in
Yeah.
the industry. I don't want to be uncouth here and make it sound like this is so contrived, but a guy like Morty from Tapestry,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had him or you haven't,
We haven't yet, but we actually.
but
should.
Morty
We
would
should.
be
Morty's a
an
fascinating
amazing
guy,
person
yeah.
to
He-
interview.
not just from his business, but his personal life. as
personal
well.
life, his story,
Everything.
and
You know what? That's a great.
he'd be a
one.
great
Yeah.
interview.
He's also very well spoken as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, and he's the sponsor of this episode.
Yes, he
so
is. Yes, he
that's a great idea, and I'm gonna hold him to that.
I'll send you an invoice.
No, and I really appreciate it. Do you have any questions for us before we wrap up?
I do actually. I'm intrigued. It can be a quick answer or whatever. I'm intrigued by this. You guys had such a mammoth. You have not had, not past tense, a mammoth business that you're so busy with. How did you I'm so curious. I know podcasts are all the rage and all of that now, but I mean, you have so much on your plate. How and why did you decide to get this thing off the ground, and how did it become as popular as it has become so quickly?
I'm going to answer the second question first. I believe that Ushi and I, thank God, complement each other tremendously. And the one thing that we have both in our foundation of our values is being authentic and being real. So people are feeling that, and it's easy to connect with us. And we're on a very interesting journey. We're meeting a lot of people, and we're inviting people into our journey as we grow. So that's really the beauty of it in the second part of your question. But the first part is, it's branding, it's business, it's marketing, it's top of mind, and it's something that we talk about from our Prime Source brand, perspective. We talk about it all the time. How can you stay top of mind? So a decade ago, it was LinkedIn, and that's it.
Right.
And then around 5 years ago, the podcast world started to blow up, and we realized that around a year and a half ago is when we started planning for it. And we're over 40 episodes in, and thank God
It's unbelievable.
we're doing some great stuff. We're enjoying the growth part of it.
And you're all
everyone
over
who's
the
part of-
place. Like a Dwight
God.
Gooden, Doc Gooden,
He's
And
part of our journey.
one of the
And,
heroes of my youth.
What Michael didn't tell you is, and I'm going to say it, is that we love to talk. And this basically forces people for like an hour and a half that they have to listen to us. They don't have a choice. We put them in a chair. And
Captive audience.
Did I tell you that
Exactly.
Ushi and I are kind of different in many ways? So yeah, we also love to listen, and we're learning from it, and it's great. So it's really a top of mind approach. It's you enjoy the marketing world, you understand top of mind approach. We go to events, we go to trade shows. Hey, I just saw your podcast. Shmili Unger, who we just had, which is a world renowned musician, singer. Right? He tells us that when he finishes singing these days and he gets off the stage, people come up to him and say, "I just saw you on your podcast." And like, I just performed now for my life, and that's a top of mind, marketing.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, you guys are everywhere. Powwow. See, I mean, you look in the
I
healthcare
appreciate that.
space.
Speaking of, we are backed by the Prime Source production team, so we thank the Prime Source team for doing everything they do to get us here. We have our new wall behind us for those who are watching us. So thank you, the Prime Source production team, for making that happen. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, get involved. Like you mentioned, commenting and sharing your authentic information.
helping the algorithm.
Helping the algorithm.
Helping us
Help
understand.
the algorithm, guys.
We also like to help understand what works for others. And we're trying to listen to as many people as we can, taking suggestions of, guests. So great to have you, Judah. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I really appreciate
Yeah,
your time
we
today.
appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
All right. That's a wrap, guys.
Awesome.